Well, being as I'm still working through my FNAF hyperfixation, my thoughts have had me returning to the subject, the series, again. Thankfully, this time it's much less in the sense of my fearing it. Though I think that still lurks in the corners, banished for the moment by inundation. As with the previous video, and any other future videos about FNAF that I probably will make, I'm not going to show any FNAF imagery, and I'm not going to do helpy this time either. In this video, I'm going to be talking a lot about like the FNAF community. Sorry. So I want to go over the semantics of what I mean by that. When I say community here, I want to clarify that I'm referring to pretty much exclusively the people who post videos about FNAF on YouTube. And within this group, most of what I'm going to be talking about is directed towards, or I have in mind, for my arguments, are the theory videos. Even like it doesn't have to be like a theory YouTube channel, but just like theory videos, even if it's like a one-off sort of shitpost thing from a channel that maybe normally does other stuff. There's a moment later on, a moment or so, that I will address the max mode community in this video, or just like speak on them. So I just want to mention that. I'll say when that happens, but otherwise, usually community will refer to people making theory videos and engaging with those videos through comments and such things. Using community to describe this group excludes a fair amount of the community, and I want to acknowledge that. Community and fandom aren't synonyms, but fandom is certainly an arm of community. Outside of YouTube, the FNAF fandom, the wider FNAF community, I guess, includes people posting on Tumblr, people cosplaying at conventions, people making FNAF-centric art, etc. FNAF fan songs. That said, I don't know a clean term, like a simple term that lets me refer to a target demographic theory videos that doesn't also implicate other groups of people that I'm not talking about or intending to talk about. So I'm just going to keep using the term community, and hopefully this disclaimer will service that. I don't want to give the impression that FNAF is only theory videos or YouTube videos, because it's not, and I think that's a short-sighted mistake to make. At the same time, at least from what I can tell, the YouTube theory community is an important part of FNAF, plays an important part in FNAF's continued cultural relevance. And so it's to this sort of effect that I want to talk about. In a previous video, I talked about my perspective on anti-book FNAF theorizers. That is, like, people who say the FNAF books should not be used for theorization. Initially, I explained that this stance didn't make much sense to me. I found it counterintuitive with what I interpreted the function of theory to be. However, when I thought about it further, I decided that these types of theorizations are still valid. I was too dismissive. I want to note here that on this point and points in the future, the fact that I take or don't take a certain perspective, I don't mean to imply that other people are also taking this or not taking this perspective, or that they should. I note this because the debate over the role of FNAF books for theory remains a verdant point of debate within the community. When I first started writing this, I had just watched a video from the channel Ghost, where the creator surveyed the community about which theories people prescribe to. Inevitably, within this survey, the topic of books came up. The results were that 49% of respondents hadn't read any of the Fazbear Frights books, is what the survey was asking about. And a similar 52% of respondents thought that the books didn't apply to what happens in the games. After making what I interpret as a slight jab at the 49% of people who hadn't read the books, the YouTuber mentions at the topic of whether anti-book or pro-book theorists are more knowledgeable about the books is a fraught point of discussion within the community. It seems like maybe this is not the YouTuber's perspective, but that she is highlighting it is illustrative of something. The YouTuber clarifies that she doesn't want anyone to use the data from the survey to harass people. I interpret her comments in this section to mean that the sentiment of you should at least read the thing before you form an opinion on it occupies space within the community. I've heard this argument as well. I'm going to move now to talk about the video game version of this argument. One of the FNAF theory channels I've been keeping up with makes community update videos, where they, I'm using the pronoun they because the channel doesn't put pronouns in their bio. And then I was checking on Twitter, and there was just like weird stuff on their page, where they answer questions and comments from the community. In one video, they highlight a comment from someone who says that despite having followed the series for a long time, the commenter didn't know about the FNAF 2 between night cutscenes until this YouTuber making this video had pointed out in a previous video. The YouTuber takes the comment as permission to soapbox for a moment, insisting that people need to play the games before they start theorizing on them. Since this video, they've continued to reiterate this perspective in their other videos. In the next section, I investigate these arguments, specifically attending to like a theoretical combined perspective for someone like who thinks that people have to read the FNAF books and also play the FNAF games before they're allowed to start publicly theorizing. This is a straw man perspective. I think maybe not everyone has this extreme version, but I still think it's worth considering. I don't want to be evasive, so I'll get it out from the start. Perhaps it's suggested by that I'm responding to a straw man argument, but I don't particularly agree with this perspective, like because it encourages gatekeeping within the community. Like there are other reasons I disagree with it, but I'll get to those in a second, or I'll get to those later. I currently feel that gatekeeping and community, the concept of community in general, not just this community, are antagonistic ideas. Although I disagree with this perspective, and I guess what follows from that is that I am viewing people who hold this perspective to be gatekeepers. I don't mean to say that I think people who have this perspective should change their minds. Although I perceive the perspective as hostile, I think it's important for perspectives within a community to not be at a paucity. I said that in an annoying way on purpose, so well. Rather than have disagreements be like interpersonally directed, I think aiming them at systems, that the systems that inform the living conditions of the world that I and others, maybe not you, currently live in, would be best. Relevant systems to this discussion are those of capital and commodity ownership. In my opinion, the legitimacy of someone's perspective should not be tied to their access to capital. This theoretical straw man combined argument would do that. Even though the first couple of FNAF games cost only a few dollars to purchase, and others are free downloads, this has not remained the pattern for the series. For example, Steam's digital store lists a security breach for $39.99 when it's not on sale. Granted, since the game first came out, it now also has a free DLC, but the base price for the game is the same. But even when entry costs are lower, I don't think ownership should be necessary for legitimizing either a theory or someone's participation in a community in general. That is to say, I don't think it's important whether someone has purchased and played however many games or purchased and read however many books for determining or evaluating the legitimacy of their theories, or more generally, the legitimacy of their presence within the community. There shouldn't be a scholastic TM tax on existing and interacting online. But the price barrier to entry is more than just the cost of software. The games require hardware to be played on, too. Compared to other video game series, FNAF is unique in that two of its mainline games launched and were designed as VR titles. Help wanted, and as you'll see, and Help wanted to. Hardware costs money too, and VR technology is expensive. While it's possible a library or other such public space could have a VR headset available for use, I don't think that would be prevalent enough for it to be expected to be the standard. Now, to be fair, these VR titles have since received non-VR ports. Help Wanted also got a mobile port. Maybe others got other ports, but I know Help Wanted got a mobile port, but it looks like it doesn't exist anymore. And my impression, regardless, though, is that these games were designed with the intended experience being VR. That literally informs the structure of the game. Even though they can now be played on a regular PS4, for example, and other platforms too. Like VR-ness informs what the games look like, what the games play like, what the games are, because that's the environment they were designed in and for. I think maybe that's not true, but that's my impression of things. According to one post I saw on Reddit, maybe the non-VR ports of the games are like intensive. Some people are saying that with lower end computers they couldn't even run the games, but I don't know if that's true or like what the barrier would be for that. As of right now, if someone needs to play all of the FNAF games, they'd need to spend upwards of $300. Could be cheaper if you jerry-rig something or buy things on sale, right? In my opinion, things like a high price tag or a VR headset are random metrics for deciding who to let in or out of a discussion. They are insensible. They could just as easily be anything, not literally anything else. Gatekeeping through ownership of commodities means reifying class structure. Price tags box fans out from participating in community. In the required ownership model, being in the FNAF community correlates with being a FNAF fan, but being a FNAF fan does not correlate to being in the FNAF community. It's still true that in this hypothetical model, the FNAF community is a community of FNAF fans, but now it's like a selective minority of all the FNAF fans that exist. And in my opinion, this exclusion would kneecap theorization. Since a person's class position informs their perspective, what they think about, a community limited to those with access to some extent of liquid capital limits the ideas expressed in the community. A strawman version of this, already strawman example, goes as follows. In one camp, a group of FNAF fans made of exclusively nouveau riche people approach FNAF as they do other rich people shit. In another, FNAF fans receiving SNAP money, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, it used to be called food stamps, right? Gravitate toward a different thematic reading of the series. Maybe this isn't a make or break issue for some people, I guess. I avoid in these examples giving examples of like what the different economic class positions would like cause people to, what it would be that people will see differently in the series, because I don't know what that would be, and I guess I don't have an empirical backing to what I'm saying, but I don't know that like a lot of discussions in the FNAF community have an empirical backing, but I don't here. But it seems to be true to me, intuitive. It's possible that representation of perspectives like isn't a huge issue or important for some people. And like I get that. That's fine. But and then so in that case, like clarification at some point that like the conversation is being limited to certain types of people or certain perspectives would be helpful. Like, and like there could be something that comes from that, right? Like reading FNAF through like a queer lens or something like that. Snapping back to reality, or my original straw man, and putting it another way, basically, I think it's all but certain that FNAF as a series of texts features images or ideas that someone with a different identity from me, class, race, gender, etc., can latch onto in ways that I maybe even didn't realize were things to begin with. For example, I watched a video recently about like the brief history of fake FNAF 3 teaser trailers and images by lotodots. I didn't know anything about the subject since I had been too scared of FNAF to go online and engage with its images at the time. And so the result is that like this person experienced life in a different way from me, and thus they have different things to say about FNAF from me. At least these are the types of videos I find most interesting. The ones that are coming from people maybe with different perspectives than me. It sometimes seems like there's a desire in the community, maybe it's just a subsection of it, to excavate the one true story of FNAF from its texts. I've watched several long videos that systematically explain why their theory is correct and how the people who think the opposite are wrong in whatever million of different ways. For example, there's one video about the debate between Puppet Stuff versus William Stuff. And just like went through everything. And I think that's totally fine to do that and have that sort of perspective. But it could also be good to reserve room for acknowledging that maybe you, like with your biases and lived experiences, don't have the monopoly opinion on what FNAF can be. But also just saying that you do have the monopoly doesn't make it so. So I guess maybe things are fine as is, like people just saying that like they were right, but like that doesn't make them right. So maybe just let them play their stuff. Well, so anyways, on top of access to class or liquid capital, playing through all the FNAF games and reading all the books requires a privileged access to time. And so that's what I'll talk about next. Even in my current ADHD hyperfixation on FNAF YouTube videos especially, where I can easily self-justify spending hours and hours watching videos and poking through wikis, there's still only so many hours in the day, and I still have obligations like grad school to get through. I still have other work to do. And with FNAF having now been a thing for 10 plus years, the amount of content that contained within it it would take a long time to wade through it all. If someone needs to have played through all the games, read through all the books, maybe watch however many theory or playthrough videos, etc., and now I guess the movies too, then like just like numerically, that's like maybe at least a week straight worth of work, probably more, before like they're allowed to sort of start to having an opinion or something like that. And adding to this is that it's not just about the games or the books, or rather the games and the books don't have non-slippery definitions. What games should someone play through before they can join the conversation? FNAF 2, FNAF, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, FNAF World? Maybe, probably. Already at this point, there's secretly a bunch of complications in the mix. And this only brings us to the first 2 years of the series. What does FNAF World mean? If I went online right now, there's the free game downloadable from GameJolt, but that wasn't the original version. Originally, and maybe this is actually not true, but there's one kind of version of it earlier on, where everything was in the FNAF minigame style graphics. Well, in any case, like after the game first launched, and it received like a lot of pushback from fans, Scott took it down and re-released it with like changes, and so now we have it. So in any case, like the version today has like other stuff. Like, for example, like the toyish iconic maybe style of graphics. Staying with FNAF World. Do I play through the version of the game after it was re-released? Do I play through the Halloween DLC? Is that a different version? It has different endings available. It has different characters. Are the mini games their own games? Does someone have to play Freddy in Space 57, but not Freddy in Space 2, because that's considered a non-canon spin-off game? And then what do we do with things like scottgames.com and or FNAFworld.com? These probably aren't games, and they also aren't books. And I guess they aren't currently hosting any information, but there's kind of existing archives of what their history was. So they're not games and they're not books, but like there are definitely people that view them as very very important historical resources and integral to the lore. Like, would they be important enough to be required reading? So anyways, my point in all of this is that there's just too much muddy water in the franchise to begin with. FNAF is FNAF. And so, as I guess usual, or as endemic to the series, demarcations and endings don't hold that much weight. In my opinion, someone can just start from where they are. I don't think everything is necessary to be able to start thinking or start participating just about something. And again, even if this weren't the case, it's not possible to hold all of FNAF in your purview all at once at the same time. There's so much stuff in the franchise that the minute someone begins focusing on one Easter egg, another hidden lore tidbit or whatever else slips away. Stressing about comprehension, totality, that's a losing game. So, like, what are some alternatives then? I've just gone through this whole process of saying how gatekeeping is maybe not the most helpful thing for fostering discourse, but I also started by saying that I don't want to shut people out of the conversation. Well, anyways, there's a lot of moving pieces here, so I'll try to attend to each of them. So yeah, basically, in general, my basic stance here is that I don't think personally experiencing all of the things should be a requirement. Maybe nobody thinks that, but I also definitely don't think that. If someone wants to experience all the things, I also have no problem with that. But people shouldn't be withheld from existing if they haven't done enough homework. When FNAF is imagined to be an already completed box of texts, when the all that describes all the things is a definite bounding box, one implication from that can be sort of an affective predeterminism. Personally, when I encounter this sort of implication that there is a discrete and large amount, like very large amount of all the things, I do become paralyzed, and especially start having they can lead to like panic attacks and serious health issues. Feeling like all the information is out there somewhere makes me talk myself into out of like saying any information intrusively. I think to myself, like maybe there some of this information, maybe there exists some kind of information that I haven't encountered that is going to say that everything that I'm like trying to think about in my argument is wrong and disproves it all. And so yeah, like part of this is I'm insecure about the idea of being exposed as false. And so I guess that part is my cross to bear. But maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm alone in this insecurity. But like, if other people, even if like one other person shares this insecurity, then I guess setting a precedent that someone doesn't need to know everything about FNAF before starting to say anything can help enable conversation and discourse. It's possible some people have the opposite insecurity and are paralyzed by the idea of not fully knowable body of work. I'm not sure what to do in that case, but I feel like a precedent of discourse and opinions are welcome no matter how much knowledge or experience someone has. Could still be inclusive in this situation. At the same time, I think it's important to respect the members of the community who currently feel reading the books and playing the games are important. One way forward could be for people to be transparent about what research they've done. How would this work? It's just sort of a question to be more refined, but I think one option could be some kind of just form or code or shorthand marker, since there can be a lot of nuance and ambiguity in how much someone has read or not. It's never precise binary. That certainly complicates things. But I think like if there could be some way to just give a heads up to people coming across what you're saying or like your existence online, it could be helpful for sorting out information. And in lieu of figuring some kind of system out, just saying something like, I haven't played Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location, but my understanding is ... could be a good place to start. Another reason this could be helpful practice, aside from like appeasing community members, would be that like being transparent in this way could alleviate miscommunications or posturing. I don't know that that's necessarily a thing. As I mentioned before, even the fact of someone like playing a game does not assure that they would be familiar with everything the game contains or contained. An example of this could be that someone might I've beaten Five Nights at Freddy's, like the original game, and never encountered like Golden Freddy. And so, like, what would that mean for their ability to participate in the community? Just because like they haven't seen the character in their playthrough doesn't mean like they can't weigh in on what meaning they associate the character with in encountering Golden Freddy in other situations, like YouTube videos or the wiki. Maybe this could be a slippery slope. But one more example is like in FNAF 4 and in Ultimate Custom Night, you have, maybe elsewhere as well, you have like background audio that is something else that's either played in reverse and garbled or slowed down and messed with some kind of way. But the only way to gain that information from the audio, I think, is to go outside of the game and into the files, which I would consider to be outside of the game, and manipulate the audio in sort of an exterior program. Like, it's not possible just playing the game to hear that the reverse audio in FNAF 4 is the FNAF Night 1 phone call. And so, yeah. I don't know, it's just like complicated, and I guess like part of what I'm saying is that just playing the games has for a long time never been the standard. There's always been sort of peripherals. Well, anyways, okay, whatever. One of the reasons I listed for why requiring people to read all the books, play the games, was exclusionary was because doing so would mean requiring people to shell out a kind of hefty sum of money that not everyone would have easy access to. Well, it doesn't help with the VR titles. One solution, maybe not necessarily. Maybe, I don't know. I think one start to a solution would be for people to like pirate them, for example. I'm going to take a moment now to try to jump ahead of the anti-piracy propaganda and give just like some information about what I mean. My perception is that some people perceive piracy as unsafe or liable to viruses. I haven't personally experienced this, but like definitely it could be a true assessment of like file sharing online. But like I think generally, if someone takes proper precautions, there are ways to reduce your vulnerability and to circumvent risk. To start with, like using a browser that's compatible with uBlock Origin browser extension, which is like the best ad blocker. My anecdotal evidence is that since switching to it, I don't get like pop-ups on pirate streaming sites I use anymore. Right now, I think maybe only Firefox is compatible with uBlock. Chrome used to be, but if I remember correctly, the ad blocker was like deemed too powerful. So Google discontinued support with it. This is recently because it was getting in the way of their revenue. That is like ads and tracking cookies. And I think almost all other major browsers are Chromium based, which just means they're Google Chrome in disguise on the back end. Another step for, I guess, internet safety is contacting other people and reaching out to those more knowledgeable to ask for help. Reading guides and other compiled sources can be very helpful as well. Certainly, currently Reddit is a good platform to find resources and people to talk to. I pirated my Adobe software, and the r/GenP subreddit had a really excellent step-by-step guide saying what to do for how to do it, how to make that happen. r/piracy subreddit has a bunch of different compiled lists for places you can stream or download all sorts of media. I haven't tried downloading games from any other sites, but I found great success in accessing with streaming and downloading movies. This is how I watched the FNAF movie, for example. For books, the website Anna's Archive has an expansive catalog featuring tons and tons of different PDF and EPUB ebook files. I currently have a faster download speed for the site because I donated money to it. But even before I donated, just using the slow download option, I found that the site works really well. Now, with all this said, I want to reiterate that perceiving piracy as a scary thing is totally valid. The resources I mentioned here are currently safe from my experience, but it's possible that this could change in the future. I think pirating is a morally good idea, but it's also always important to take precautions when possible and to be careful. And if someone isn't comfortable with pirating, they don't have to. But then that brings us back to people being priced out of FNAF. So another route that could help alleviate the cost of entry then would be sharing resources in general. The FNAF books are relatively new, mostly. So I don't know if libraries would have all of them, but certainly could be a good place to look and just check a book out, so you don't have to buy it, or if you don't want to read the ebook version. For the games, it could be worthwhile asking friends if they've already have any of the FNAF games, in which case one option could be if you trusted them or whatever, could be to share libraries with them on Steam, so you could play the game without having to purchase it. And at scale, this would mean that there's not the burden of each person having to have their own individual copy of everything. It's not as helpful, but also the games go on sale semi-often, I assume. For newer games that have physical releases, it might be an option to buy a used copy on eBay or something like that. There's a couple of FNAF games that are free to begin with, as I mentioned. FNAF World, FNAF Pizza Simulator. I think these may be the only mainline games that are free. There's also at least one free FNAF book, I believe. The Choose Your Own Adventure, or whatever the generic title of that is, book VIP, is free to access somewhere. I don't know where. And also there's a number of fan initiatives that are already working to alleviate these kinds of burdens, where people are making their own audiobook readings of the series or individual stories. Well, with that said, while making content more accessible price-wise is important, it doesn't alleviate the series' time burden cost to entry. I think what you basically need to do for that is extend this intercommunal sharing model, extend it one level higher. People sharing not just their copies of the text, but also their thoughts and analyses of them. There's some precedent in a communal organization of resources with the wiki being a prime example of what I'm talking about. And in fact, since originally writing this, there's the YouTube channel Droid posted a 24-hour-long FNAF video, which is has in large part a compilation of different community perspectives. I don't know that is entirely encompassing, but there are also videos about specific games that are on YouTube currently as well. However, with FNAF, the types of information contained in some of these, currently contained in some of these more generally accessible places, like the wiki, don't always cover everything that is in the texts. The wiki page for FNAF 1, for example, has general information about the games, including reviews, a brief synopsis of the gameplay, strategy guides for specific nights. There's a table showing AI values for the animatronics that the animatronics use each night. But besides that, most of the backend and technical information about the game is absent from the page. I'm mentioning this because this is information that has been compiled by the Maximum community. For example, how movement opportunities work, how intervals, how frames and passage of time work in these games, and in the Click Team engine that they run on. This information is compiled in different individual portions, but what I'm trying to get at is that it's cordoned off from like a more generalized site of compiled information, which, like, currently I think the most centralized one is the wiki. I don't know what the solution would be, but moving towards a more centralized model would kind of decrease the barrier to entry in the series in terms of knowledge barrier to entry. It doesn't matter like how much information is compiled if, like, I don't know where to find it. With that said, I don't necessarily think that the wiki should be like the go-to place for where this information is centralized. I just think that there should be some kind of structure for that. In fact, preferably not the wiki, because Fandom, the company that hosts the wiki right now, generally has a model of prioritizing profit over users, and in my opinion is just sort of rather scummy in general. But that's a topic for another day. But I probably won't talk about it though. So yeah, maybe if you are someone who has extra time, you could work to compile whatever resources speak to you or interesting to you about the games. There's definitely like a lot of videos and efforts that are engaged in this sort of practice. I watched a video earlier today as a recording about 172 FNAF glitches in the original Click Team FNAF games. It's a sort of a meticulous documentation of these things and how they work and how they happen and what they do, going through the code and whatnot. Over 10 years of FNAF, all sorts of things have ended up being relevant and non-relevant. Saying this, kind of talking about with theory and narrative in mind. And so, like, chances are, if you just like take note of like whatever, some kind of information, maybe it could end up being helpful to people in the future. Like, if you're a huge FNAF fan and if you've read all the books, maybe go through them again and take note of whatever pattern or themes seem interesting to you. Maybe the number of toes an animatronic has doesn't matter that much right now. Although that seems debatable given the still unsolved status of the Midnight Motorist minigame, which prominently features three-toed footprint. But it could end up becoming a super important detail again in the future. And even if it doesn't, if there was a centralized compendium of that sort of information, it could end up saving someone, say who was making a trivia question about it, a little bit of extra time. And it's this sort of example of someone making a trivia question about how many toes does Bonnie have in FNAF 1? It's sort of to go to show that even like for people who have played the game, compiling this information can be helpful and time saving. So that you don't always have to like go through and redredge up everything individually whenever you sort of want to find out something. I don't know, something just fell, but I don't know what it was. Yeah, so this is not just for people that aren't putting in the work, even for people that did put in the work. It's just generally kind of helpful, maybe. Alternatively, like if you're a huge fan of FNAF and you don't want to be responsible for breaking new ground, you could like just go through and double check the information that other people have been gathering. Does Golden Freddy really have three toes? Does he always have three toes? Like considering amount of buttons or whatever on Freddy, like Withered Freddy versus FNAF 1 Freddy. And double checking here doesn't necessarily mean debunking. It can also be speculating about alternative ways of reading an image or events. How many eyes are lit up in Golden Freddy's mask and FNAF 3 Bad Ending? Well, so some people are saying 1 and some people are saying 2. And so in my opinion, it depends on how you read the image. And for some people, however many eyes are lit up is really crucial for figuring out whatever is happening in this narrative, the story. In my opinion, increasing knowledge circulation within the community necessarily means moving away from the I solved FNAF model of theorization. That is like a model that purports to logically assess every available piece of information and then synthesize the ultimate underlying truth of the series as a narrative. Just like being more saying like, yeah, it's like sort of where I'm at, but maybe it's not the absolute truth. I consider this type of model to be based on a framework of objectivity, and I'd personally like to move away from objectivity as the sole anchoring metric. In addition to objectivity, I advocate for discussion in community spaces to foreground subjectivity and like a polyphonic plurality. It doesn't mean like we should get rid of objectivity, but think about other things as well. And I think these sort of forces of subjectivity, etc., that there's room and space for them to exist in this theoretical wiki or archive. I think some kind of compendium of information doesn't have to be purely objective. I don't know how that would work necessarily. More than anything else, I want the FNAF community to keep making wacky theories and like going out on a huge limb every now and again, even if it seems like it ends up resulting in nothing. I don't hate the I solved FNAF genre video. Easy enough watch, but lately it seemed kind of stagnant as a form. To my ears, the average, on average, is sort of just reinterpreting the same set of clues and the same like 4 or 5 permutations of arranging them. Like what's in the box, and what's Midnight Motorist about, and what's the death order, and just like swapping everything this way and that way and this way, but it's still ending up like in the same place. I don't have a super recent example off the top of my head, but one of my favorite sort of wacky theories is, I guess now 2 years old, this video, kind of a shitpost of a video probably, from the YouTube channel AstralSpiff, about basically asking like, what if Mapbot from Security Breach is actually like a crucial and lore necessary character? So instead of textual analysis, looking at how many eyes Golden Freddy has or whatever, which is like what I saw FNAF videos use. This video by AstralSpiff uses the theoretical framework of like, what does it mean for the game if we interpret security breaches, buggy, and unplayability on launch as intentional and not an accidental error, unintentional feature of the text. What does that allow us to say and theorize, and what kind of possibility does that open up? Okay, so I guess that's most of what I have to say about community. To close things out, I'll just do a quick speed run, a bunch of mini theories or tidbits I've had bouncing around my head since before or during when I was making this video, just because I think that would be fun. But basically, most of these are just like ranting, like thoughts I've ended up having about FNAF. Maybe part of the intention is just show more examples of like what wacky FNAF theories could be. And the first one is definitely not a theory, but maybe it is a theory, that like Foxy is very gender, which I don't think is like a new statement. Original Foxy is whatever, he, him. Now in FNAF 2, you got Mangle, which is definitely like a version of Foxy. There's Withered Foxy, and there's Mangle, who switches between he, him, and she, her pronouns. So like I interpret that as gender fluid. Mangle being gender fluid. And she's, I guess it's sort of interpreted to be like a model of Foxy. Unclear if like Funtime Foxy or a toy Foxy, what it is. That was just sort of destroyed by kids, supposedly. What if Foxy is an egg, like a trans femme egg? Could just be like could be a trans femme and just living life as male identifying person. Lolbit and Funtime Foxy, for example, in their FNAF World sprites are very femme coded. I've seen some people using sort of he, him, she, her pronouns for Funtime Foxy. I guess I should have looked that up if there's a standard for that. But it's interesting that like this character, a permutation or a recolor is having these qualities. And then continuing, like most recently in the Steel Wool era, don't see Foxy, but now we have Roxy, who in many ways looks like Foxy, like a Foxy adjacent, and is now definitely femme. Foxy transitioned? Oh, what? Who knows? But, you know, that's what I'd like to imagine in my head canon. But it could definitely, I open that it's not necessarily the absolute truth. A wolf turn from a fox? That doesn't work. They're different animals. That's what the TERFs want you to think. Okay. Next theory. What if a crying child is just autistic? Like that's why they're crying. Some people are saying crying child's name is Dave. Some people are saying Cassidy. Whatever. Crying child. In my ongoing pursuit to project my neurodivergence onto the Afton family, see the description of my first FNAF video. I wonder if maybe the reason the crying child is crying, for example, when he's in the closet, or not the closet, whatever that back room at the Fredbear's Diner, in that one cutscene where there's that suit with like a tuft of hair or whatever. Maybe he's crying there because he's like having a meltdown. When I was in preschool, I made an eagle costume out of printer paper that I cut out and taped together, and I wore it to school, and it made me like just so happy. But when we came back from research, I discovered that one of the kids had torn it all up, and I was devastated, and I cried. I just remember being so sad. Obviously, I don't necessarily see this happen in the game, but when I see that image of crying child in the closet, I at least it's easy for me to see myself. When I would just like get so, especially before I started masking, I just get so sad, so sad. Now, of course, maybe there's a big red line of text that pops up when you boot up FNAF 4 that says, "The crying child is not autistic," and just no one has ever mentioned it because it's never been relevant to theories. This could be the case. I haven't played the game, but I'm probably that is not in the game, but I can't know for sure unless I played it, and I'm not going to. I don't think that this means that my theory is wrong. Even if the crying child is not autistic, that line exists. I don't think my theory is wrong. For me, who hasn't played the game, this is a theory that makes the game into a thing that helps me make meaning and make sense of myself. Theory should not always be something trying to fix the universe in place. Maybe not ever. What? The truths being mined should be relative and flexible and allowed to persist, even if debunked, because they exist as one of many separate contingents. Okay, this is not a theory, but I'm just going to say it. I thought Scott's last name was Coffin for like the first 2 years of FNAF. Like in those game theory videos, it'd always be like Scott Coffin. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. It must be like a pen name that someone with the last name Coffin would be making all these horror games. What a shock it was when I found out that it's wrong. Okay, here's the theory. No one's brave enough to speculate about this. What if William Afton did the bite of 87? Everyone's always saying, "Oh, it's Mangle. Oh, it's Toy Chica." What? Oh, it's Foxy, whatever, Withered Foxy. Oh, it's Freddy. But no one ever saying it's William Afton. What if he was just like in the yellow rabbit suit and he was just like chomping on somebody, gnawing, arr, 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 arr. And like the staff were like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is gonna get us shut down. Oh no." But what does this mean about the frontal lobe or whatever? I'm choosing to ignore that. I just like to imagine William Afton gnawing on somebody. Okay, here's the next one. I guess it's sort of I just forgot what it is called. So an imaginary fight of my sort of platonic image of FNAF fan versus the movie Rashomon. I think if the FNAF man, my platonic image of FNAF fan, watched Rashomon, they would just like be wiped off the face of existence. It's like, why are things happening in different ways from these different perspectives? Why can't there just be one timeline? They don't tell you that in school, but that's how it would go down in my mind. Oh, okay. Here's the next one. And again, it's not maybe that much of a theory. But FNAF Max Mode people, like the people that are really into FNAF Max Mode, especially like the upper echelons of these ultimate challenge, whatever challenge mode stuff, I think it's basically just a math nerd playing their own sick and twisted version of Osu. It's just like a rhythm game, in my opinion, but rhythm game where maybe it's a little variable, a little generative. You gotta change things here and there, but you click on the screen and click and going fast, and the mouse going around. Granted, also there's this rhythm game without that song, and it's just that clickety 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 of the camera opening and closing. But maybe no. Okay, that's my theory. FNAF Max Mode is a sick and twisted version of, and I say that jokingly, not actually sick and twisted, version of Osu, but for math nerds. Or maybe just neurodivergent people. Or maybe it's something about intersecting with the furry community. I don't know, but math nerds. Let's see. Okay. I don't see enough people speculating about what is the fact that the cursor in Five Nights at Freddy's sister location has RNG. What does that mean for the series? What does that reveal? What does the fact that the code for Lefty in Pizzeria Simulator has an index out of bounds for the teleporting function, and thus he functionally doesn't have that mechanic? I don't see enough people speculating about this. Now, if I was a real person of my word, I would then speculate about it, but I don't. And thank you, Bones5 YouTube channel on YouTube, for these informations about the games. Anyways, observing the continual effort to make everything meaningful. This is my point in this last bit with Lefty out of bounds error. So the continual effort to make everything meaningful is interesting because it's usually not coupled with an effort to make everything meaningful all at the same time, because there is so much incorporated within this everything, and it's so I don't know. I can feel it in my hands, but I blanking on the words. There's a thick viscosity to it. It warbles and it wobbles, but you can't just stretch it out and make it into the thing. It's a yeah. Minor details can reveal huge things, but we only attend to some of the minor details. If the standards that audiophiles are important, and we should mess around with them. Let's unleash the pareidolia. Everything. Whoa! Bring back Mike Kill All. Because, you know what? Maybe that was right all along. Maybe it wasn't right when FNAF 2 came out, but the people that thought that the FNAF 2 trailer, when you played it backwards, was saying Mike Kill All. Well, who is the main character of the FNAF games? Possibly. Oh, it's Michael Afton. Maybe. Oh, I don't know who he killed, but maybe he did kill all. Oh, and continuing, I guess, on this, before I close out, continuing on beating the dead horse of what does all the games mean, especially for a security breach, and it's true for a lot of other games. There's so much of the game that doesn't make it into the final release version of the game. How should we theorize Vanny or Vanessa? Or Gregory is a robot, which is a very controversial video by Game Theory when the security breach came out, that was saying, well, based off of what we see, it seems like maybe Gregory, the player character, is actually a robot child, which I guess hasn't been debunked, but is general consensus in the fandom that this is not true. But when you look at the game as it was released, where you have lines about blood being censored, and you have different elements that maybe would suggest this not being the case, not being present in the game, how is one theoretical person supposed to make sense of this stuff? They're just supposed to intuit whatever the idealized intended version of FNAF is. We can't know that. I don't think even Scott Cawthon knows that, right? And he's making the games, theoretically. I'll talk about that later. So yeah, Vanny and Vanessa, and Vanny is barely even in the game. Security breach. I don't know, it's just interesting. And so, and there's also patch content or changed content. Well, maybe that's cut content as well, or different versions then would have different possibilities for what meanings we can make from the games. Not enough people considering what is. Hold up, let me think about. What does the fact that the probability of Nightmare Bonnie in FNAF Ultimate Custom Night, what is the fact that his probability of killing the player was lowered to some percentage in one patch of the game from a different percentage because there was a chance that, like, if he was in your room, you just die no matter what. And if you just get unlucky, there's nothing you can do. Well, not enough people think about that one, huh? Okay, well, that's all I got. The end.